Hi everyone, this is James from F9 Audio and the Freemasons, and welcome to this tips video showing you what I consider to be a few killer functions from recent DAW and plugin releases. Okay, so no mucking about, let's dive straight into Logic, and for me, one of the best inclusions in a DAW system ever, and that is the inclusion of Camel Audio's Alchemy inside of Logic Pro X. It's a brilliant synth, and not only is it a synthesizer in the traditional sense, it's a world-class sound designing sampler, and I want to show you those aspects of it right now. So we're going to put one instance in. You'll be familiar with this screen by now, it's the browser. We're going to come straight off there and go to the Advanced tab. Now let's just listen to the basic sound. Okay, not bad, but let's turn everything off. We're going to turn these filters off here. I'm going to come down to the Effects tab and turn off all of the multi-effects, or the patches effects, and now come up to the oscillator section, and we're going to turn the other three oscillators off and just leave oscillator A. Now let's just have a listen to that. Okay, so it's a virtual analog oscillator, but we want an audio sample in there. So I'm going to click where it says SAW and select Import Audio, and we get an import browser up. I'm now going to go to my desktop. I've got two samples that I want to use for this, or one of the two. Two vocal samples from Angie Brown's great vocal pack that's available on Loopmasters. Let's grab that one. But before we go any further, and this is really important, let's have a look down on the bottom left here at the analysis mode of the incoming sample. It's currently set to formant, which is all to do with pitches and additive partials and all of that kind of stuff. We want the granular engine. So click on granular here. You've got two types of mapping. One of them is for more pitched instruments, which we have here, and the other one for more percussive. Okay, click import, and let's just play it back. Now you can hear some warbling going on already in the sample, so the granular engine is definitely working. Now let me play it an octave lower. Now all of those sounds are exactly the same length, so that's definitely the granular engine at work already, but let's start to muck about with it. I'm going to click on this A oscillator tab here. And you'll be in quite familiar territory if you've done any sample editing before, but you'll see this granular tab open here on the right. That's where all the magic's going to happen. So let's first of all muck about with our start position, and we'll just edit it so that we get the love section. And then in typical granular fashion, I can just grab the speed and bring it slower. Now normally that's how far you can go, but with this, now the fun starts if you ask me. I'm going to come over to the grain type and just change it to trapezoid. We'll come back to that later on so you can see what that actually does. Now let's just have a listen. Stretching, but in mono, right? Well, let's just turn the stereo offset of all of the different grains to 100%, so each one is spread across the stereo field. Now listen to this. Brilliant, and I can change all the speed controls to really muck about, and obviously the position is actually selecting where in the waveform you're actually starting all of this process from. Now there's some controls here that I honestly don't know what they do, but they're great fun to just muck about with. So let's have a bit of R time, whatever that is, and some R pan. Nothing wrong with a bit of R pan. No idea what it does, but it sounds better and slightly more tortured. That can't be wrong. Taps, whatever they are, and whatever that percent. Tap spacing, amazing. Right, now you can really start to dig in. Let's change the size of the grains and the amount of grains right up. Or even go the other way, bring the size, let's bring the density down to 1 grain, and then we'll alternate the size as it plays. Now you add that to some pitch changes within the oscillator, and I'm sure the chaos that you could create is starting to become apparent. And being Alchemy, it's got a brilliant modulation system so that you can pull in anything internally or externally as well. So this has enormous power. Let me just try and do the same thing by adding what we got. Performance, no, note property. Let's do pitch bend. Down here we can see the depth, so my pitch bend now should do enormous pitch changes. Didn't even do that in rehearsal. Fantastic. So look, you can see how exciting this is to muck about with. And please dig in. Now, also the different types of grain shapes. Let me quickly show you. We're on trapezoid, which seems to work quite well. Hun, you may have seen from other time stretch algorithms, tends to work well. Some of them will actually create clipping, like the ramp ups and downs. Now, Alchemy does actually have a cinema sound design pedigree. It was used extensively throughout the recording of the brilliant Inception soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. They used an Edith Piaf sample to actually generate the kick to bring you up through the different levels of dreams. And let me show you, with exactly the same sample in place, the kind of stuff that they were doing. Genius. Dive in and see what you can get out of it. I'm sure you'll find something brilliant. Ozone ear. Now, Ozone is used by pretty much everyone at the moment because it makes everything sound bigger, fatter and wider, right? Well, sometimes not always, and I want to show you something that may actually surprise you. And if you've got it, I do encourage you to actually start checking this out. So we've got this kind of electro soul production, nice and retro. And as you can see, no sausaging has yet been applied to this file, so it's nice and dynamic, but it is a nice mix. So now we're going to come and bring up Ozone, and I'm just talking about dynamics here. This is really what I want to show you because it's the limiter that's becoming really popular at the moment. And we've got it on IRC2, and I'm just going to do the classic, bring the threshold down and zap it right up. Let me just pull the ceiling back a touch. Nothing but love for you. Much better, right? Well, sometimes not always, and this is what I want to draw your attention to, this little ear icon over here. When we turn this on, and Ozone's telling us here, let me just show you what the kind of hover over says, enables Ozone to automatically match effective gain when bypass. Now this is quite powerful. You do have to drop your output level down because it can cause clipping, because what it's going to do is compensate for this gain that you're applying when you hit the bypass button. Now I want you to concentrate, stick your headphones on or use your studio speakers if you've got them, and listen to the snare and the kick drums. We're going to start with Ozone in, and then halfway through I'm going to hit bypass. Now, I hope you can hear what I'm hearing there. All of the snare drums and the transients of the actual kicks are starting to get throttled. They're starting to be cut back by the actual limiting. And that just shows you, just by hitting that bypass button, how we can really damage our audio once we're doing it. Now, it's a trade-off, because we do need level, especially if your music is going to go for clubs. If your music is not going to head towards the clubs, I would really encourage you to experiment with this and see where your music sounds best while still gaining level. So let's pull it back a little bit. And there seems to be quite a good balance of power and level, but without actually throttling down some of those transients. Now, obviously, there are transient extra emphasis controls here, but trust me, just play with this and have a good look. You'll be really surprised at what sometimes you're doing to your music. And where this is really important is if you're using Ozone on a whole series of stems and you're starting to chop the heads off all of the stems. I've mentioned this on another video that's on the Loopmaster site, but it can be really quite dramatic how it will eat into your music's dynamics. So that's one of the most powerful functions I've seen on a plugin for ages, because it shows you sometimes you're not doing exactly what you think you're doing. Now, whilst we're here, I just want to quickly show you the actual visual representation from the screen grab software of what you've just heard. This is the section that I actually bypassed Ozone within, and you can see the difference. That's the dynamics that are still left in the material when Ozone is bypassed, and this is what the sausaging's doing to it. Now, as I say, this is a trade-off because we all want level and we always want our tracks to sound good, but sometimes you don't want to kill all of that. And the reason sometimes old records like 80s and 90s records sound so good on the radio, and especially 70s records, is that they don't have the living daylight squashed out of them. Okay, let's head over to Ableton, and the recent 9.5 release got us some more joy from Sidechains. They have put their filter algorithms inside Ableton Simpler and their auto filter plugins, and that allows you to use a brilliant trick that I've been using for some time that I can't take full credit for. Got to give full credit to the guys at Samples from Mars for blogging this, and when I tested it using the original Sidechains filter, found it to be brilliant. I've now just tested it in Ableton, and here we go. So look, I've got one of the drum track products up, and I'm using a bass line from Roland's System 100 plugin. And as can often happen in these kind of situations, you've got a bit of a swampy bottom end. There's so much sub on the System 100 patch, and the kick's not quite cutting through enough. So what I'm going to suggest to do is something that may seem completely backwards. We are going to take some bass off both instruments. So I'm going to go to the kick, and I've just instigated Ableton's auto filter, and I'm going to put it onto high pass mode. Now I'm going to come all the way down and turn the resonance up, and here's the important bit. See where it says clean here in the little triangle? These are now the different algorithms underneath clean that have come from Sidechains. So I'm going to use the MS-20 filter, and I'm just going to play, and as I play I'm going to let's just drop the output level a bit. Actually, I'm going to sweep up the filter frequency whilst the resonance is quite high, say about 30, somewhere between 30 and 40. Let's try there. Now I'm just going to add a touch of drive control. It's somewhere around there we roughly want to be. I hope you can hear that kick's already starting to just come through a bit. Now I'm going to do the same with the bass. So auto filter, come to where it says clean, click on MS-20, high pass filter, quite high resonance. Now I'm going to use a little trick here. Let's just turn the auto filter off for the minute. I'm going to open the EQ8 up into analyzer mode, and let's just see where the kind of lowest note is. So it's about here somewhere. So we're looking probably, I'm just looking at the little display in the bottom corner here as I move this EQ node. We're looking at, so we going to want something about somewhere between 38 and 48 hertz. So now I'm going to tune it in. I'm going to use my ears to do it. Don't always rely on the graphics. Actually, do use your ears to do this. Once again, resonance quite high, and let's sweep up. And that shouldn't work, right? We're taking bass off. Well, we are, but we're doing it in a very clever way because we're using the same kind of filters that you'd see on classic analog hardware, and that we're using a resonant peak to actually bring out the important tones within the kick and the bass. Now let me play that back and actually bypass the kick filter. Now, I've not actually tried this on drum and bass material yet, but I reckon it's going to be amazing for that, because you can tune that thing right down to the exact note that your kind of main bass note will be working on, and really help to bring some division between, and some fatness using the drive control between your subs and your kicks. Also, don't forget you do have you can change the actual the steppage, or the dB slope of the filter. So maybe on bass instruments it's going to be better at 12 dB. Let's have a listen. To me there, the bass end is already working together an awful lot better. Let's add a little bit of sidechain, and then I'm going to give you a proper before and after example. Okay, so on the top blue tracks here, I've got a little bounce without the filters applied, and in the purple on the lower tracks, the filters are actually on. And listen to the difference. You can even see it on the waveforms. And by the way, please don't sit there with your laptop speakers on without a pair of headphones on trying to judge this, because you won't hear it. You need to hear the subs. Now, for those of you that don't actually work in Ableton, you're probably seeing this through gritted teeth. Well, Sidechains are still selling the drop. It's exactly the same filter circuits with exactly the same controls. You can select different types of analog filter circuits that the guys actually have gone through and really modelled incredibly well. What's more useful on this plugin is that there's actually a mix control. But here's the weirdest thing. For some reason, on the latest version that I've got, it won't actually load in Ableton. No idea why. Maybe it's something legal. I've got no idea. But for anyone else who wants to try this trick, do go and grab the demo from the Sidechains website. It's an excellent plugin. Okay, this next one's an absolute gem and concerns a brilliant plugin developer that's been around for years. If many of you open up your plugin folder, I'm sure you're going to find something by TAL or TAL Audio. Now, recently they did something that I've been calling for absolutely ages, and that's release a plugin that emulates loads of vintage samplers. And to show you exactly how powerful this is to me, I've just got a little house track back up again. And I've got this classic old sound. A little bit of reverb on it there. So first of all, let me just bounce it down with that reverb on. And I'm going to freeze it. And then use that trick of right click again, flatten, and then you've got basically a full audio file. Now, these kind of sounds are great, but it's a little bit too clean, and we want that dirty kind of vintage sound. So I'm going to put in the TAL sampler. I'm not going to touch anything else. I'm just going to go up here to layer A, and it's already got a kind of saw wave loaded into it, but I'm just going to drag our brand new bit of audio and put it straight on that waveform. It'll take a little while, but it will load it straight in. And here we go. I'm sure you can hear straight away that it's got all of the artifacts of a vintage sampler. And anyone who's gone anywhere near an SB1200 will know this kind of noise. But here we go in the resampler section, and we can drop the sampler rate. And we can change the amount of bits. Now, of course, anyone used to a bit crusher, you'll say, well, this is nothing new, right? Well, you've got these additional controls where you can control the jitter, and a jitter is almost like the digital errors that were in early samplers where the clocks basically weren't stable enough, and some fat saturation. Okay, now let's stick that on the track, but before we do it, I want you to bring your attention here to the stretch controls. Yeah, it's got a granular system as well, so we can get really dirty. I'm sure you can imagine what that's going to sound like on vocals. It really does work. But let me just show you how bitey it is once you're actually putting it into tracks. Now, that was just one of the DAC types, and DAC stands for Digital to Audio Converter. It's the chip that used to be inside the old samplers. and it's on sample and hold mode, but you see there are actually emulations of old chips used in classic samplers. Here we've got an emulator 2 chip, which I believe is the same kind of chip also used in the SP1200. You just get that lovely old fat kind of grind to it. Now, I know you've got this kind of facility on things like Maschine and on the MPC, but for me, this just takes the biscuit. Mainly because you can just drop anything you want into it from the actual arrange page. And to show you that, let me just go back here, and I'm going to take, I think we'll grab a new instance, and we're going to take these loops right here. Now, they're nice enough, but let's crunch them up. I'm going to grab another instance now of TAL Sampler, bring it down here, go to layer A. Now, I've got this audio all chopped up here, so I'm just, again, going to pick it up and stick it right there. Now, it'll take a while to just process it in. Now, let's turn the original loop track off, and what I'm going to do is draw just a 1-bar MIDI clip, and let's stick a note on at C3, which is obviously the bass. Sorry, the actual note, the kind of root note of the sample. So now that's now in there for 1 bar. We'll just duplicate that a few times, and now let's muck around with the different DAC settings that this sampler has. Look at that, that's beautifully crunchy. Now let's just stick it back in and see what it sounds like. And here's the original loop. Nice and high fidelity, but here we've got some good old 8-bit crunch. Stick some vintage love in your productions and demo this at TAL Audio today. Now, this one really is simplicity itself, but I just want to show you quickly because it's great when you're in sound design mode. It's particularly when you're stacking drum sounds. So we're inside Maschine. I'm going to grab a whole series of claps and just dump them straight onto the sound, onto the different pads. It'll automatically spread them out. Okay, now the first thing I want is everything in SP1200 mode. So let's select everything. Voice settings, standard SP1200, and I'm actually going to drop the pitches of all of them as well. And you can do that by selecting multiple pads, nothing new to see here. But what I want to do is to start building up a composite, and then actually I can show you that we can spin this straight back into the same patch. There's a long one, so let's just pan the first 2 left and right. Now I'm just going to put notes on for all the ones I want to fire. So if I listen to the composite sound, bar length at 4, all I'm going to do that, and you can actually drag and drop it straight back on to the Maschine patch. So now my composite sound is here at the bottom. Now, I found this to be a great way, particularly using internal effects or even external plugins within Maschine, of building up great sound design kits incredibly quickly. And now a quick tip for what is fast becoming my favourite DAW to work in day to day, Presonus Studio One. This is an incredibly streamlined DAW because it doesn't have to deal with legacy code that holds many other applications back during updates. Now, this tip is not designed for people that are already using Studio One, because you will probably know this. This is designed for those of you that are thinking of changing DAW and looking around to see what the market has. Because there is something you need to know about the underlying timing engine of this particular application. Now, to show you exactly what I mean, I've got one of the F9 drum tracks products up that I've recently made available for Studio One, and some string pads here, some analog string pads from the recent Grid 1.0 release. Now, although sidechaining isn't as popular as it used to be, it still really has its place because it allows us to get stuff mixed nice and tightly. And Presonus have a brilliant way of actually dealing with it in Studio One. So look, I've got a compressor that's going to be doing the sidechaining already set up. But now what I'm going to do is send the kick to it. And this is where this differs from any other system that I've seen. I'm on the kick track and we're coming down to the track inspector here. And you see this sends box. When I hit plus, I can add a bus channel or a normal effects channel, but I can also add a sidechain. And look, everything's there set up, so that's what I want. I want it to go to the strings, insert one compressor, here we go. Now, there's something I want to make very clear here, and this is why I've included this in this tips video. These sidechains are in time. They are not just a bit in time or sometimes in time, they are always perfectly in time. So every other DAW manufacturer from Avid to Ableton need to take note of what they've managed to achieve here, because Presonus have cracked it. And they've got a brilliant system that allows me then to actually fire this out to other bits. So now let's put a compressor, say, on our bass here. I'm just going to add the insert. Okay, just a standard compressor from the built-in stuff. And we go back up to our kick track. And where we've got our sends on the kick track, I can just add another sidechain. There it is, bass, compressor. It just comes up. It's nicely, easily labeled. It's not some kind of weird version of bus 7 or something like that. You can actually see what you're doing. And now when I go onto this compressor, we can do the same. How easy was that? Everything's nicely labelled, and you've actually even got some additional level controls here of how much you want that kick to be sent off to the different sidechains. So as I say, every other DAW needs to get up to this level, because sidechaining within mixing is vitally important, and not just for the kind of things that we normally take for granted. A great trick with sidechain, if you can't get your vocals to fit over this massive synths, is to sidechain your synths so that every time that the vocal comes in, they dip a little bit. That will really help you to get everything kind of fitting around, because the brain can only really focus on one thing. So if you get the attack and release times right in that kind of example, it will work perfectly. This next one is again incredibly simple, and it's all about one plugin, this brilliant thing from Soundtoys, which is an emulation of an old Shure hardware box. But like many of these, it was difficult to get two of them working in stereo. In plugin form, all of this stuff just works on mono stereo, whatever you feed it. It's basically a complete smash it up machine. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn it off for a minute. Let me just play this little house track back. Now let me show you what this does, and I'm going to put it in 100% and turn the volume down because it's very noisy. Now you can hear it really grabbing everything. Whoa! And it comes back afterwards with a vengeance. You've also got some crunch, adding some distortion and some filter controls with the darkness. But what this is fantastic in on a full mix, in tiny, tiny amounts, is really bringing all of the ambience of your track and making it sound like it belongs together. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go from ridiculous quantities down to small now. There you go. Perfect. Well, you can really hear it kick in. So as you can hear, this is going to be fantastic for breakdowns. Let me show you what I mean when we got a little break section here. Now, it really can be good to automate some of this, particularly the mix controls and the fast and slow release times there. But give it a go on your audio. It will just bring a well-mixed track together. It's almost like having an enormous limiter on it without having an enormous limiter on it. So I hope you found something for your workflow in this tips video. Come and check out the tutorial side at F9 Audio and check out some of the world-class soundware on the site. We've just released a free set of Trinity drum kits including 808, 909 and Linn drum samples.